Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning into our live session of Healing Hearts, Managing Mental Health During the Pandemic. With mental health often overlooked, it deserves special attention as it is a growing concern and an area of great importance. We want to educate and aid people of all ages in ways to identify and improve their mental health. Before we kickstart this session, a short introduction of myself. My name is Arvind Bharat from the STARS events team. And on behalf of our team, we would like to thank Taylor's University for coming on board with this on our live on web session as our educational partner. It's definitely an honor to have them with us. Tonight's session, we will be joined by Associate Professor Dr. Anna Suya, Psychology Program Director of Taylor's University, Mr. Kenny Lim, Executive Director of Befrienders Kuala Lumpur, and Dr. Jasmine Lim, our special guest for tonight. The session will be moderated by Ms. Pang Chai, Psychology Stream Coordinator of Taylor's University. A quick note, this event will be cast live on our Facebook page, Starbase. You may be able to find the FB livestream link in the Q&A box below. Do share it across with your friends or families to find out more about tonight's session. All right, a few quick housekeeping matters before we begin. As everyone dials into this webinar through different internet bandwidths and devices, you may or may not experience minor technical glitches, so please be patient if there is any. To minimize the risk of technical glitches, all participants are muted and the video cam is turned off. But do participate by posting questions to our panel. On your user panel, click on the Q&A button below and post your questions if you are joining using Zoom, or place it in the comments section if you're watching via FB Live. Without further ado, I'll pass it to our moderator, Ms. Pang Chai, to take it away.
Thank you, Arvind. Good evening and welcome to Healing Hearts Managing Mental Health During a World Pandemic. This is organized by the Star Media Group in collaboration with Taylor's University. My name is Chai and I'm the stream coordinator for the Bachelor of Psychology at Taylor's University. I will serve as your moderator for this webinar on learning about mental health management and support during the COVID-19 outbreak. So, allow me to introduce our speaker for this evening. Our first speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Anna Suya Jegatison, Program Director for the Bachelor of Psychology at Taylor's University. Dr. Anna Suya is a licensed and practicing counselor in Malaysia for over 10 years. She is a certified trainer in reality therapy and is a thanatologist, meaning that she's very familiar with the psychological and social aspect related to death. She is currently the committee board member of the International Association of Counseling as well as the Malaysian International Counseling Association, PERCAMA. She is currently also conducts a series of Eyes on Our Children sessions that looks up at the safety of children and teenagers in cyberspace. Our second speaker, Mr. Kenny Lim, is the Executive Director of Befrienders KL. Kenny has been a volunteer with the Befrienders Kuala Lumpur for 22 years, providing emotional support via telephone, email, face-to-face to those who are in distress and suicidal. He also facilitates support for suicide loss survivors, trains over volunteers, as well as gives talks and runs workshops on suicidal prevention. Not to forget, our special guest speaker for tonight, Dr. Jasmine Lim, Principal CEO of Cell Biotherapeutics Resources, which focuses on the commercialization of research and development of cell-based cosmetic products and stem cell therapies. A mother of 3 children, she is also passionate about laughter wellness, and she is co-founded the Joke Factory, Asia's premier comedy club, a place to distress, rejuvenate internally. She's also the co-founder of FemX Talk, a safe space that draws attention to topics around women empowerment. Just to inform that the format for this evening would be, we have all the 3 speakers on their topics and we'll open floor for the questions. If you have a question at any point of time, feel free to type in the chat box and we hope to come to it at the Q&A session. Without further ado, let's start. I'd like to invite Dr. Anna Suya Jegatison to speak about psychological management and support during the pandemic. Dr. Anna Su, would you like to take?
Sorry, I was still muted. Okay, this is Dr. Anasuya here. Welcome. And I'm going to be talking about psychological management and grief support during the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic was unexpected, obviously. It was a crisis situation and everybody had to stay home. So you think that, everybody's at home, everything's fine, but life goes on. People got sick, people had losses, some people passed away during the pandemic. And all of that created, this hole in how do we handle grief. Usually, funerals is one of those events where we come together as a family. But this time during the pandemic, we were not able to do that. And a lot of people don't really understand grief. They think grief is something abnormal. As long as we've had families, as long as humankind has had, living in communities, we've had grief, we've had people die, and we have been managing grief for a very long time. So what is actually grief? Okay. Now we are in this new normal to handle our life. We have limitations on travel. We cannot visit our family. There's increased anxiety about going out, about facing fears, about, oh my God, what if I go out and I get sick? What if the people I love get sick? What if I'm going out, I don't get sick, but, my family members get sick? For the first time, we've come to this idea that as human beings, we are the superior species. And this minute, tiny virus has showed us how vulnerable we are as a species. And that is scary. That is part of, the dialogue that creates fear, that creates uncertainty. And all of us are now forced. And this is the one good thing, is a lot of us wearing face masks. It's not to protect yourself. It is to protect other people. It is to actually extend the protection out, to be concerned about how we impact on other people in the new normal. So when we look at the new normal as individuals facing this new normal, the amount of anxiety and vulnerability that this has created is really quite high. And it's not something that's easy. I've told my students before, there are people dying. This is a war. It's a war that is not happening in our homes, but it's a war that's affecting us as individuals. And that is an anxiety-driven kind of situation for all of us. And in this anxiety, we also have, death, grieving, and loss. So before we go into that in so much detail, into the grief itself, let me just quickly talk about, self-management in COVID, because my topic is quite vast. So the first part of self-management, of course, is please listen to the correct sources of information, especially medical doctors. Your Facebook friends who go and research on COVID genuinely probably are not, getting the information from the correct sources. Avoid conspiracy and fear, because right now there's too much of that. There's too much conspiracies going on and we need to clear our heads. Create boundaries between work and home. You may be working from home, but even in that situation, there are some places that probably you should not be working from, If you find nowadays when we're going out, we are finally, the MCO is over, we can actually gather. If you feel that the situation is wrong, instinctively leave. Don't stay in that situation. It may be a family situation, but you think there are too many people there. Somebody is coughing. Smile, be nice, but just move out of the situation. Being polite and putting yourself in a situation where you're feeling extraordinarily anxious, or you feel that you may get sick and hurt your families, that's not something that's healthy for you or anybody else. So if you are in a situation and you just feel that it's not right, please, take care of yourself. Prioritize your health, your family's health. Just politely leave. Don't hang around in that situation. And right now, a lot of people have got fear and anxiety about going out. There's one thing to leave if you understand that, okay, there's something going on here, there's too many people, so I need to leave. But if you find that in every situation, it's no longer a fear of a particular situation. It's now a generalized fear, and you're anxious even before you leave the house. In that case, please manage it early, because a lot of people now are fearful of leaving the house or fearful of going into new situations. The fear may be getting too high. So before it becomes almost a disease that takes over your mind, you need to leave early. You need to manage that situation a little bit early. Okay, I hope you can follow. So this is self-management during COVID. So now we're talking about grief per se. So all this is happening. We have got all these complications to handle during, during COVID. What is grief? So many people misunderstand what grief is. So grief is an emotional experience generated from loss. It doesn't have to be death at this point in time. The word for death, when people refer to death, is actually bereavement. Bereavement is when somebody dies. But grief itself can come, when you break up with somebody that you loved, when your friends go away. Right now, people who have got family members who are overseas and cannot visit, who have got functions where people who you loved promised to come and now they can't come. You could go into grief at this point in time because the feeling is there, the feeling of loss. They should have been here. If you're having a convocation and you cannot go for your convocation, that feeling of loss, it's there. It's a real thing. It's part of grief. All right. And it's not easy. So loss is the perceived deprivation of something that is meaningful. So if you have something meaningful in life and it disappears, that's loss. So grief is the feeling, the big feeling. Bereavement is the actual death of somebody, and loss is for all the other things in our life. And all three can create emotional stress, can create pain, and it's a universal thing. Like I said, we have been experiencing grief since the dawn of humanity. So what are some of the emotions that we experience when we are in grief? We have shock. Right now, it's like, how can people pass away when we can't go and visit? Some people feel denial. Some people feel anger. Some people feel loneliness. You feel fear because, what happened? Why? What's that? What's going on? Depression. Some people feel acceptance. Some people, I didn't want to put it there, but some people even feel relief because the suffering is over, especially if it's a prolonged suffering. You feel relief. And then you feel guilt for feeling relief, which is one of those things. That's the part of being human, the hard part of being human, the hard part of managing this type of emotional struggles and emotional loss. So grief is not just one emotion. Grief is a mixture of all these emotions, and they come together and they create a situation where, for at least a period of time, we have to pause. For a period of time, we have to manage that grief. And then we can generally move on. But not everybody moves on. I'm going to explain as we go on that there's normal grief and then there's what is called complicated grief. And the complicated grief part is where we create pain for other people because we don't understand what they're going through. We go, I'm over this. How come you are not over this? And, we don't have that level of empathy to actually understand and see that your loss is very important. You are managing it, but other people may be feeling complicated grief, and that's something slightly different, which I will be talking about. So, very straightforward, the impact of COVID on grief. It strained our ability to cope. We're already coping with this stay at home. I'm trying to do my work. My kids are disturbing me. I'm with my kids. My work is disturbing me. I don't know whether I'm going to lose my job. I don't know whether I'm going to get a pay cut. All these thoughts are in our head. And on top, so our ability to cope is almost at its maximum. And then somebody passes away. And then we lose someone. So it becomes overwhelming. It becomes the situation where it is more than just the loss of that person. It is this whole big mess that our life seems to be, and this weight that is on our heads. We have reduced loss adaptation. We are unable to adapt because there are so many unknowns. Right now, we have, reduced MCO, but we've all seen everywhere in the world, MCO is coming back. Countries are closing the borders again. So there's a fear of the second wave. We don't know what's happening. So our ability to adapt when we are overwhelmed by emotions is difficult. So be kind to yourself if you have faced grief and loss in this period, or if the grief and loss is coming back and in this period. Be kind to yourself because you got to understand everybody, it's not just you in this situation. Every single human being in this situation is finding it harder to cope than normal. It is not normal. This is not yet even the new normal. This is just abnormal. Okay, it's not the way we've normally coped with grief and loss for millenniums. For generations, it's not the same way of coping with grief and loss. And honestly, it hinders mourning. It hinders our ability to mourn. Anybody who's lost somebody, you want to go to the funeral. If they are in a different location, if they're in a different state, you have to think 5 times whether I want to go there. If they actually passed on, and I had a family member who passed on in the height of MCO, and you know, they couldn't have a funeral like we normally have. And just they did live stream parts of it, and just seeing just that family there, and the thought in your head that this person deserved better. This person went through so much in their life, they deserve better. That was going through my head when I saw the little bits that they showed, that they shared. And it was heartbreaking, because what we do culturally, what we do as a family, all of that is broken because of MCO. So COVID actually had a very deep impact on grief. It actually made grieving so much harder. And a lot of people are putting up, oh, it's okay, you're trying to ignore, you're trying to put it in the back burner. But grief is there, and grief needs to be managed. Okay, so what is then complicated grief? So that's normal grief. Complicated grief is what some people may be experiencing now, the sense of being overwhelmed by that grief to the point where you cannot adapt your behavior, and you are doing things that normally you wouldn't do. Normally I can come out of this, I can manage these thoughts, I can manage my thoughts. But right now, I can't manage my thoughts. I can't manage my fear. It's because at this juncture, many people may be stuck in that grief because of this whole complex situation, making grief not something that, like last time. It's something new. And it's part of the new normal that is not really, well, for the lack of a better word, it's not really easy to deal with. It's really difficult. So, what exactly is complicated grief? So, this is how I put it. It's grief plus. So it's grief plus an extra burden, the shock of a sudden unexpected death, fear and anxiety. You have normal grief, and then suddenly you have to feel fear and anxiety, multiple deaths. You open the newspaper, so many people are dying. You look at the rate, now it's gone. The deaths from COVID is #1 in the world right now. And anybody can get it. So the fear is there. Guilt for not being able to attend people's funeral, guilt for not being able to visit, not visiting them before, not taking that chance to visit them. People who plan trips to visit family members, and then those plans got stopped. That can create complicated grief, because you're like guilty, the feeling of I should have done this, but I couldn't. Guilt plus extreme emotions of unfinished business. Now, this one is going to be really common during COVID, because there were lots of things we thought we had time to say. We had lots of things where we thought we could have gone over and said something to people or shared something with people. And then we couldn't. And we are, and some things cannot be said via the phone. Some things just cannot be shared through those kinds of medium, all right? So this is something that is difficult for people. And of course, because we have, in general, you have crisis, the situation in itself is way overwhelming. So people are very overwhelmed by the whole situation, okay? So the grief experience is, we have all these thoughts, we have all these feelings. Sometimes I'm fine, sometimes I'm not. All these are normal, okay? What is wrong with you? You're experiencing this stuff. There's nothing wrong with you if you're experiencing it. It is normal. As human beings, we need to manage. We need to find ways to deal with grief, and grief comes back. You'll find yourself going to normal, you're fine, perfectly fine one day, and the next day suddenly, you're doing something, you're hanging out the clothes, you are driving in your car, and suddenly all the grief comes back, and 5 minutes ago, you're fine, okay? But that's part of being human. That's part of the new normal, all right? That's part of, not the new normal, that's part of the normal way of dealing with grief. So as human beings, we have to construct our reality. We have to maybe bring the people who died into our own lives, give them a space, on day-to-day basis. If you have to do, rituals for yourself at home, please do so. If you have to do rituals that you need, okay, do those rituals that you need to manage yourself. You have to understand how grief works. You'll be normal for most of the time, and suddenly it will hit you. Suddenly it will come really strong. The feeling will be, almost overwhelming, the pain. That's how grief works. We can forget most of the time, but in those 1 or 2 moments, we'll remember. And let me just say this for those of y'all who remember and those of y'all who feel pain. The people who died, you feel pain because they earned it. You love them. When it comes to grief, it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of respect. Okay? It comes from a place of respect. And so if you can actually, when you love somebody, that's why you feel pain. Because you're going through that journey, and it's a reverence to people who have been part of your life. Don't be scared of grief. Don't be worried about grieving when somebody dies. It is not a negative journey. It is part of love, and it's part of moving forward in our life. Okay? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. There's this what Winston Churchill says, and it's a journey. You feel you're going through hell, any kind of crisis, not just grief. Keep going. Keep moving forward, because you will come out of it. And some of us do need help, some of us do need support. But when it comes to grief, grief is not depression. And the major thing you need to remember about grief is, when you are grieving, it comes from love. It comes from a reverence for the person who passed on, and they deserve that love. So, just let it come, let it do what you need to do to feel better at that point in time, and it will pass. Because that's what the process of grief is like. Okay, so I think that was the last part of my slides, and people have been saying that it's time up. I think the 5-minute check has been going on. How am I on time, Chai?
Good.
Okay, I'm on time. Good. I was getting a bit worried whether I was going over time or not. Okay, so
sorry. Thank you, Dr. Anasuya. I believe that was enlightening for all of us. I'd just like to ask a quick question. What are some of the therapeutic methods one can opt for losing someone during the pandemic? Can you hear me?
Sorry?
My question is, what are some therapeutic methods one can opt for after losing someone during the pandemic?
Okay, I kind of started mentioning it just now. One of the things that you can opt for when you've lost somebody during the pandemic is do it from your home. Have a ritual in your home where you can show respect for that person, where you can show how much, you appreciate that person. It can be something small, it can be something complicated. You can sit down, write poetry, you can do a drawing, you can go to your altar and do a special prayer with your family, but do something that has got some meaning for yourself. If the activity that you're doing has meaning, then it will help you manage your grief. It will help you manage your loss. The main thing is create that meaning for yourself. And you will find that, I've been through many versions of grief, and even during the pandemic, it's about connecting, not just inside you, but with the memories in your head, with the person that they are. It's connecting in various levels with all these things, so you feel connected and you feel part of that. The people you lost are still part of your family. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Anasuya. Next, we'll move on to Kenny Lim to speak about emotional support during a pandemic. Mr. Kenny Lim.
Thank you, Chai. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? I will be talking about emotional support. My name is Kenny, and I am from the Befrienders KL. Befrienders KL is a not-for-profit organization, and what we do is we provide emotional support to people who are in distress, people who are feeling depressed or suicidal, and basically to anyone who needs someone to talk to. They can call our 24-hour helpline. Okay, sharing a little bit of our statistics during the MCO period. we have received, on an average, about 82 calls per day. And out of the callers that have contacted us, up to 38% of them have expressed their suicidal ideation. And there is this common belief or statement that people actually believe it's true, It says that suicide usually occurs out of the blue without any warning. So is it true or is it false? The answer is it's actually false, because research has found that up to 80% of those who have died by suicide or have attempted suicide have actually shown warning signs or symptoms, okay? The difficulties for them is that how do I want to express it? How do I open up to others because of the fear of being judged, because of the stigma that's attached to mental disorder, to suicide. So that is the challenge for them. But people who are feeling suicidal generally have the urge or the need to share what they are going through. So when we talk about suicide prevention, the first step is to learn what are the warning signs, to recognize them, and also to take them seriously, right? So I'm going to share with you some of the warning signs of someone who is feeling suicidal. The two main feelings of someone when they are feeling suicidal are hopelessness and helplessness. There's a saying, there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? But for someone who is feeling suicidal, it's very difficult for me to see the light. I can't even imagine there is light at the end. For me, I feel like I'm stuck in this tunnel in total darkness, and I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. So the question is, what's the point of going on anymore, right? And at the same time, the person who is feeling suicidal is also feeling very, very helpless. I feel like no one is going to be able to help me. I can't even help myself. So again, what is the point of living anymore, right? And the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness can actually make someone feel very, very much isolated, because there's no point of talking to my friends about it, because most of them can't really understand what I'm going through. So a lot of them would actually withdraw themselves, for example. And research has shown that people who died by suicide, a high percentage of them actually are struggling with their mental health issues, right? So for example, some of them may be struggling with depression or anxiety disorder. Other warning signs are, for example, extreme mood change, mood swing, change of behavior. Then you can also see that there is extreme change in their eating behavior and also sleeping patterns. For example, some would actually feel like I can't eat, I lose appetite, I have no appetite to eat. But there are also people who actually binge, who eat a lot. So it really depends on individuals. The same goes with sleeping patterns. You do have people who find it difficult to sleep because when I want to sleep, I will start to think about my problems, I will start to think about my issues, and that just keeps me awake throughout the night, okay? But then you also have people who would prefer to sleep throughout, because when I'm sleeping, I don't have to worry about my problems. I don't have to be awake and feel the pain, So again, whenever there's extreme change in eating behavior or sleeping patterns, that means something is happening with that person. Making final arrangement, for example, calling out people to say goodbyes, to ask for forgiveness. Substance abuse, again, research has shown that a high percentage of those who died by suicide or attempted suicide at the point of dying, or the act, were under the influence of either drugs or alcohol. Many also chose to express it either verbally, they say things like, if I'm not here, no one will miss me. I'm such a burden to everyone around me. My life is not worth living. So besides expressing it verbally, nowadays you also see a lot of people, many people actually posting it online on social media. So whenever we see a post like this, I think it's important for us to do something about it, to intervene. One of the major risk factor is previous attempts. So if you have a friend or family members who have actually attempted suicide in the past, the risk gets higher. Meaning to say, in the future, if the person is in a crisis again, chances is that the person may consider suicide again. So pay attention to people who have actually attempted suicide in the past. So how do we support someone who is in distress or who are feeling suicidal? It's by providing them emotional support through active listening. Okay, so if you notice a friend has been displaying some of the signs that I've mentioned earlier, how do you approach that person? How do you start the talk, right? It's very important for us to remain calm, because, you know, if someone wants to talk to us about the problem, they would prefer to talk to someone who is emotionally stable. So try your best to be as calm as possible. Find a suitable place to talk, somewhere which is not so noisy, has privacy, yeah. Because when someone opens up to you, the person may end up crying, okay? What if the person say, no, I don't want to talk to you about it, I'm okay. So if that happens, what you can do is basically, I think very important, to respect that person. Do not force that person. If he or she is not ready, then accept it and tell the person that, hey, it's okay. But in the future, if you feel like there's a need for you to talk about it, come and let me know. I will try my best to support you. In the meantime, if you feel like things troubling you and you feel like maybe you want to talk to someone who is a stranger, you can try to call a helpline, and you can give them the befrienders number. Okay. So active listening, as I mentioned earlier, active listening is a skill where we listen to someone and we convey our empathy to that person, to show that person that, hey, I can empathize what you're going through, and also to accept whatever that person is going through, the pain that the person is experiencing. And that is very important. This is also mentioned by Dr. Anasuya. Empathy is very important when it comes to supporting someone who's in distress or feeling suicidal, because we want them to know that, hey, it's okay for you to feel this way. It's okay for you to share with me whatever pain that you're going through. I will not judge you, right? So some of the things that we can practice while we are supporting someone using active listening is to encourage them to open up more. For someone who has been struggling maybe for a long time, who has been feeling suicidal for a long time, and doesn't have the chance to to talk about it openly, to express it to someone, it may be very difficult for them to open up, right? So what you can do is say things like, it may be very difficult for you to talk about your pain, but take your time, I will be here for you. So encourage them. Reflect. What do you reflect? We at the Befrienders, we do a lot of reflection of feelings. So you say things like, it sounds to me you're feeling very angry at your best friend because you feel that she has betrayed you, for example. Yeah. So when we do reflection of feelings, we are showing that person that I can empathize with you. I can feel what you are feeling. And also it sort of like validates their feeling. It tells them that, hey, it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad. Because a lot of times when you go to your friends to talk about your problems, people will say things like, hey, don't feel angry. Don't get angry. Don't get so worked up. Yeah, chill, you know. So instead of doing that, you want to tell them that it's okay to tell me your feelings. It's okay to tell me your pain. Okay. You can also do paraphrase. Paraphrasing means repeating what has been said to you, but you use your own word. Again, it shows the person that I have been listening to you and that I'm also interested to know what is happening. Yeah. Clarify, do not make any assumption, do not jump into conclusion if you're not sure with whatever that's being said. Like, for example, if I say, I have just lost my daughter, so what does that mean? Yeah, can you respond and say, Kenny, I'm so sorry, how did she die? right? So don't do that, because my daughter could still be very much alive, right? Loss could mean that she has been kidnapped or she ran away. So ask, when you mention that you've lost your daughter, what do you really mean? What happened to her? Okay, so clarify. Silences are also very important, because when a person is going through a crisis in his or her life, it's very messy in their head. So they would need time to think about, how much do I want to share? What are the things that I want to share? Because no one will share 100%, okay? So it's okay to stay silent, to allow them time to process what is going on, what is happening in their mind, what do they want to share, right? Also, if you're with that person face to face, your body language is very important, your eye contact, you know, you want to pay full attention to that person, you want to show respect to that person, you want to tell that person that I'm listening to you. Also, your tone of voice plays a very important role. Now, how do we know exactly if a person is suicidal? Okay, even if the person displayed all the warning signs that I've shared with you, are you sure 100% that the person is suicidal? Yeah, we can't be 100% sure. Yeah, the only way to find out is to ask the question, are you feeling suicidal? Okay, or you can actually ask subtly, do you feel like life is not worth living? Have you ever felt like you don't want to wake up in the morning anymore? But asking the question, is it okay to ask the question? Is it dangerous? If the person is not suicidal and I bring up the topic of suicide, will I give an idea to that person? Okay, many people have this fear, yeah? But survey has shown that, research has shown that talking about suicide does not plant the idea. It actually is very helpful to bring up the topic of suicide, because imagine someone who is feeling suicidal. It's never easy to open up and talk about their suicidal ideation. Again, because of stigma, because of fear of being labeled, yeah? So instead, if we ask the question, we are allowing them the opportunity to talk about something that they want to talk about, that, but they have no chance or opportunity to talk about, right? So don't be afraid to ask the question, right? But if you ask the question, please be prepared, yeah? Because the answer may be, yes, I am feeling suicidal. So what do you do next, right? So the thoughts is asking if they've thought about ending their life. If they say yes, the next thing you want to find out is if they have a plan. Have you ever thought of how you're going to do it? Do you have a plan of how you're going to end your life? And then allow them to talk about it. Because from experience, at the Befrienders, we ask our callers, all our callers, this question, yeah? And if they answer yes, and we allow them to talk more about suicide, at the end of the conversation, a lot of times they feel very much relieved, because at last, you know, this burden, I'm able to get it off my chest, yeah? So allow them to talk about suicide. Be brave to ask the question. If the suicide risk is high, stay with them, remove the means, keep the pills, poison, knives, keep them away. And if you feel like it is a case of emergency, you can actually bring them to the emergency department of a public hospital. But what's very important here is also seek help. Yeah, get help from someone who you feel is able to help you. Yeah, if you guys are students, for example, keep in your phone the number of your counselors, for example, or the number of your counseling unit, so that you know in times of emergency who to go to for help, right? Things to avoid: do not judge that person, do not tell that person what you're doing is wrong, what you're feeling is not right, you shouldn't be feeling this way, because once you do that, you are closing the door and you are not allowing that person to open up. Do not argue or belittle their suicidal thoughts. It's wrong. You know, your future is so good. It's just for a while, the suffering, then everything will be okay. You shouldn't think about suicide because it's against the religion. For example, yeah, religion is a protective factor when it comes to suicide, but it's a double-edged sword. If you use it the wrong way, it actually makes the person feel worse, right? False assurances, for example, we all like to say this, yeah? Don't worry so much, things will get better eventually. Your friend just broke up with the boyfriend or girlfriend, and you tell this person there are other fishes in the sea. Not helpful, okay? Things to avoid: cheer up, be positive. There are people who's worse off than you. Not helpful as well. And one thing that's very important is that I think in the process of supporting others, right, we forget to actually take care of ourselves. Self-care is very important. You know, always stop and ask yourself, am I doing okay? Is it affecting me? Yeah. And if it is affecting me, do something about it. Reach out for help yourself. Okay. So very important here. It's important to support others, but very much more important is how you are coping yourself. So take good care of yourself as well. Thank you very much. This is our helpline. So if you or any of your friends are struggling with any issues at all, do call us. We are 24 hours. And if you are subscribed to one of the 8 telcos here, you can call us for free. Thank you very much. Thank you. Back to you, Chia.
Thanks for sharing, Kenny. Next, let's have a chat with our special guest, Dr. Jasmine Lim. Dr. Jasmine, you wear many hats. Not only are you and your husband, Haris Iskandar, is a high-profile couple in the entertainment scene. You're pursuing a career in stem cell engineering. You have founded various ventures from comedy to women empowerment. And you're also juggling motherhood with 3 children. All right, so
yes, 3 children.
3.
Yeah, so
So
much joy.
the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown must have presented you with some challenge. I would like to know, how did you juggle with all, and how do you cope with stress, and perhaps what are your go-to methods and support networks that you have?
Okay, so hi everyone, thank you for having me. So initially when this whole pandemic came on, obviously my husband and I was kind of worried, of course. It's definitely going to affect everyone in many different levels. So initially we were like, okay, what should we do? What do we do, you know? So we went on that mode. And then we were talking and we were like, you know what, we need to change our mindset, you know? We know that this is an uncertain situation. So our mindset, a positive mindset, is absolutely important. And I think we started changing our mindset as such that, you know, how grateful are we? You know, we are staying at home, we are safe, and we are spending so much time with our family. It's insane. I've never spent so much time with my 3 kids. And we were like, hey, you know what? Instead of being sick in a hospital and look at all our frontliners out there, and we were just grateful, absolutely grateful. And I think we were also starting to worry about the daily wage earners and stuff like that. You know, they are, and these are some people are actually quite close to us, like the pakcik that sells nasi lemak, you know, started texting us, like, this is like real true story. Like, doctor, I wait, this. So we try to help out people that we could. And then it made us feel even more grateful to be where we are today. So I would say that our mindset is totally very important, and we started being even more grateful and even for where we are. And with that, we started off something called the Hope Brunch during MCO, where I actually cook for 1,200 packs a week, and we serve, so we serve daily wage earners, those soup kitchens like for TV, the Lost Food Project, Feeding the Needy. We serve many of them. So, and that made us feel, of course, good, and at least we are useful. We're sitting at home and we are doing something, and we just were so thankful for where we are. But again, I would say that, you know, the most important thing here is to adapt. And coming up to work life, you know, especially in the arts industry, I also co-own the Joke Factory, which is a full-blown stand-up comedy venue. It's arts, you know, arts is already like, you know, you don't make much. So it's purely driven by passion. And Hari even conducts sometimes free classes for, you know, anybody who wants to learn about writing, directing. And of course, on the business side, it was pretty worrying as well. So currently we are at a point where, you know, we might possibly reopen again in August and get all the comics together. And bear in mind, the comics are also daily wage earners. You know, most of them don't have a full-time job. They are freelancers. So the good thing about this whole crisis is that it brought everybody together. Everyone's more united, and I have connected with people that I don't know. NGOs that I don't know, I've connected to them. Freelancers, I've connected to them. So somehow, looking at the positive side of it, I'm thankful that it happened, and I have to say that I am grateful that I'm able to spend so much time with my kids at home. Yeah.
Dr. Jasmine, when you mentioned about how the pandemic and the lockdown has severely affected the entertainment industry, and we are facing income losses, stress as a result, and what is your advice for others in a similar situation, in a similar industry?
I think we can't sit here and just sit and complain. I think we have to start innovating, adapting to the current situation, and shift. Literally, the goal here is shift. So I literally learned, and we had major long conversations with Harriet, because we had clients that come in to us as like, okay, how can we get you? I'm in Hong Kong. How can we hire you? And we were like, hey, let's discover. And then we discovered Zoom, and then after that we discovered many other platforms like the Microsoft team, and there's so many things that we could, we discovered new things, we learned new things. So I think it's an absolutely perfect time to learn something new. And guess what? You have to go with the flow. So you can't sit there and say, no, I refuse. I can't do online webinars. I can't do this. I can't do that. But reality, you have to move on. You would need to shift. So there's different things that we are learning every day. So I guess it's a journey that we all move forward. So as long as we are moving forward, learning something new, able to shift within seconds, I think that's amazing. And that's how we could tahan this crazy pandemic. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. As a founder of the Joke Factory, how do you think people can use laughter and comedy in their everyday life for mental wellness?
Okay, this is something that I would really want to share. I would say we run this business almost 100% out of passion, just because that I see happy faces stepping out of the room most of the time, and I've connected to people that I don't know, and this is true story. Yeah, I had a lady who walked out from the room after the show. She came to me tearing, and she's like, you know what? This is the first time I laughed after my mom passed away, and that's almost 2 months. Her post grief was almost 2 months. So I felt, so this kept us going. And I would say, and I'm going to be really honest here. I have a lot of learners who come here. They do their own thing. They hibernate here. They want their own space. It's a space for most of them to hide. But I would say it's a safe space to be. And we are actually pretty open. We speak to everyone. And same goes to the staff around the Joke Factory. So laughter is important. Yeah, when you have a tough day, everyone have a tough day, including me, you, and everybody else. So I think it's the way how we deal with it. So if you think you need to laugh out loud, just go out for a good night out. Yeah.
Totally agree with you. So yes. So with the new norm, as a parent with 3 kids, I'm surely safety is a priority for you, especially when you go for outdoor activities with your kids. Did you make changes to your daily regular activities?
Okay, to be really honest, the first time my kids went out was actually last weekend, and we went to Bangsa Shopping Center for literally just coffee. That's it. That's what we do, and I do take extra precautions. I mean, I don't allow my kids to go out, and they are absolutely fine with it. God knows how they tahan. Okay, they have not gone out since February, and I think they are the happiest kids. I think because they get to spend time with us, and they are constantly beside us. They don't even have the urge to let's go out to this play gym, that play gym. No, I think they are so comfortable and fine staying at home, and that even amazes me. So the most we've gone out, last week to BSC, and probably a drive-through to McD's a few weeks ago. That's all we have done. But definitely and the kids do understand, when we go out, you need to take precautions. Let us start wearing face masks, sanitize your hand, wash your hand more often. They understand. So I think we have instilled that in their head so much. They're like, okay, we are out for 10 minutes. I think we need to go home now before the coronavirus catches us. So yeah, it's quite cute. But yeah, I think they understand. And I think that's important. Educating your child, trying to tell them what's happening, that's important. bringing a positive element into it is important. And I think this whole pandemic have made us very structured as well. Yeah. So yeah.
Wow, nice, nice. I'm sure the kids were excited, and they probably were very exhausted on that day because it was so much adrenaline. Fun.
Yeah, but I would like to say something about e-learning though. I think during the pandemic, we didn't have school, but everything is now in e-learning. I think that's something that I really struggle with my kids because I have 3 of them, about 1 year age gap, and then now I'm aspiring for an extra iPad, and these are the things that we look for, So that kind of taken a toll on the both of us, to be very honest with you. So we were like, my God, we have to sit with them from 8:30, and we have a break at 12:30, and go back for e-learning at 2, and it ends at 4, and after that they have homework, tons and tons of homework, and I'm wondering what on earth is happening here. And now I have to sit with them. And so what happened, how we handle it is I told Harris, you know what, because since the kids are scared of you, so you do all the e-learning. So I'm the smarter one, so you do the e-learning, I'll come up with the schedule. So I have a schedule like from 8:30 to 12 to 1, this is what you do, and 1:30 you prepare for this. But after, I have to say, after 2 weeks, they kind of got into the whole process. So they know what to do. They know how to scan their homework. Now they know how to print their homework. They know how to hand it over. So that made my older child very independent as well. And what we slowly made my older child do is to care about my second kid's homework. So he does all that. So because he's the older one, it's a good time to make him responsible for his siblings. And of course, we work on a reward system as well. So they now have their stars and their numbers, their pointers. Maximum is 5. If you get your 5 points end of the week, and then you're the kid of the week, and then you'll be rewarded with probably a toy. Yeah, so that's how we work with the household. And I think working with 3 kids at home, it's so difficult. It's really difficult, yeah. So every day is almost 24 hours is playtime, right? Because they don't know. In their head, it's like, 2 o'clock you need to be with me, 4 o'clock they come and bug you again, 4:30 they are by your, So I told them they had their own timetable. So at 4 o'clock you can bug me, and 4:15 you sit and do your homework. If you don't know your homework, you ask your brother first. So we put him responsible again. So it's a good thing. They connect, they hibernate. Sometimes they are in their room, they're doing their thing, they have role play. So yeah, I think we had pretty good fun, and that's how we made e-learning interesting for us.
I think that's a good idea though. Like e-learning should be fun so they can absorb faster and
making it fun. Sometimes even arts and craft it's which I find it a bit ridiculous to do it over e-learning, but I think it really took a lot of their time. For example, my son would needed to come up with a cardboard castle, and he's 5 years old, and we were like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Find buttons for you? And what am I supposed to do? But I mean, to look at it in a different way, I think it made it all interesting. It got all the family members together. Now we are building a castle, and this next minute you are in the castle. So yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. All right. Thank you, Dr. Jasmine.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to move to the Q&A session, and I'm going to read up some questions. The first question is from an audience. How to cope with grief if I can only talk about it? I'm not interested in doing anything. The habit of talking about it recurs often and it's not helping me to get over it. I think this question, Dr. Anasu, could you give some...
Thank you. Okay, so when you have got recurring grief, it's called a STUG, a sudden traumatic upsurge of grief. And this one occurs for most people, who have experienced grief or loss of people who are really meaningful in their lives. You'll be fine. Suddenly you'll remember. And when you remember, the feeling is very intense. This is actually how grief works. It does come back because the person who passed on is never coming back. We are aware of that. The loss doesn't change. The love doesn't change. Because the love doesn't change, the pain is also there. that's just to say that why it comes back it seems to come back in cycles. Now, for the question in particular, I want to talk about it, but talking about it doesn't help. Here's my question. Who is listening? And how are they listening? My thought here is that there is something in the story that is not being said. You are sharing a story by rote, and I can almost guess that how you share the story is almost word for word like a radio, you're saying the story. If that is the case, you need to try to tell the story to somebody who listens carefully and tell them to help you slow it down. Go into details, because they say the devil is in the details, the grief is in those details. Sometimes you are skipping parts because that's the core of the pain. But you can't say it, so you can talk around it, but you can't actually say the part that hurts. So what you need to do is you need to slow down your story if you've been repeating it so many times, and get somebody who can listen, to listen for the details that you are unconsciously leaving out when you tell that story. So there's a need to say something that you don't quite acknowledge what it is yet. That is my best guess from one short question like this. Okay, I hope that helps. I hope you can find somebody to talk to in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anasu. Mr. Kenny, one question for you from the audience. Where to get training for counseling, and where to go get group support or counseling? Any recommendation?
Okay, so I'll answer the part on where to get support group. Yeah, you can actually check out the Malaysian Mental Health Association website. I think it's a very good source there. They have listed out all the NGOs, all the private and government sector help that is available. You can even call them to check with them. Yeah. In terms of training, maybe a little bit of publicity here for the befrienders. Yeah, we do run talks and workshops on active listening, like, how do you practice all the skills that I've mentioned just now, because for 15 minutes, you won't be able to learn much. Yeah. So we do run sessions on active listening, and then we have role plays. How do you practice what you have learned? Basically to make you more familiarized and also be more comfortable of even asking questions. For example, suicidal questions, yeah, because I can tell here that it's important to ask the question, but when it comes to the time, how comfortable are you asking the question, right? So it does take a bit of training and also practice, maybe, yeah. So those who are interested can just email us and we can arrange something, yeah.
Yes. So audience, you can
I can also add, there's also Persatuan Council Malaysia, where you can actually see who are licensed. And please do check on counselors, that make sure your counselors are licensed and are actually registered, because the Lembaga has done that. There are lots of universities and schools that do training for people in counseling and in mental health. So there are quite a number of locations nowadays that you can get support from. Okay, just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny, and thank you, Dr. Anasuya. Dr. Jasmine, question from the audience is, how does one cope as a parent who is overwhelmed with the kids and other things at home, and coping with the guilt of not being the perfect parent?
Okay, good one. No one is perfect. I think that's something that we would need to accept. None of us is perfect. I'm not, you're not, no one is. So I think the first thing we should do is to be kind to ourselves and stop beating ourselves. I think that's the most important thing. I think we as parents, we are literally doing our best to give our kids. So the first thing we should do is be kind. And secondly, just go with the flow. So there are times I get tensed about things that, I need to do it this way, and I'm very structured. But there are times, because my husband is the chill, laid back one, so that kind of calm me down a little. So it's okay. It's okay, if your kids are just a few minutes late for e-learning, it's okay. So I think the most important thing here is, number one, be kind. Number two, just go with the flow. Shit about to happen. Things will not go your way. Just, go with the flow. Yeah.
Very good advice. I think that would work for most people. Dr. Anasu, question from the audience is, how does one cope with depression and anxiety when one loses a job and the uncertainty of getting another job, that transition? Go more hopelessness, how to cope with it.
I've been keeping an eye on the questions, and there were a couple of questions on that. Was one individual was elderly and another one was young and hasn't found a job yet. So look, there's no denying that if you've lost your job in this situation, you are a victim of COVID. What is your mindset now? Is your mindset, I'm going to continue to be a victim? Am I going to continue to allow the situation to victimize me? You have to actually stop and say, firstly, I may have been a victim of this, but I won't continue to be a victim. Because if you go in for job interviews, if you go in for, if you go in any way where you're trying to sell yourself, and if you have that in your head that I'm a victim, it will project to potential bosses. So the first thing is to say that I have been a victim, I will no longer be a victim. That's a choice. So now it becomes a choice to no longer be a victim and to move forward. Now, the second one is to go back to your core strengths. What are your core strengths in order to see where you can go in today's world? I mean, Dr. Jasmine was talking about creativity and finding a job. How do you brand yourself? Because nowadays, people are finding jobs online. People are finding all kinds of, interesting, strange, unique niches online and unique niches through the internet. So what can you do to brand yourself in order to get a different kind of job that maybe you never thought about before, a different kind of field where, you never would have considered before this? It is a crisis situation and it is hard for everybody. I know that. But in order to come out of it, there's no magic that I can give you. There's only the idea that you need to rebrand yourself. You need to stop being a victim of the circumstances and go back to your core strengths. Your core strengths, especially for the younger person, it's not passing an exam. The core strengths are what made you pass that exam, are what got you to where you are today. And if you think you don't have any other core strengths, you need to go back and examine, because as human beings, we do have core strengths. We do have abilities to come out of stuff. So that is the best I can say at this point in time. And if you're really feeling very down, please go and talk to somebody and get help. There is free therapy by the Lembaga Council Malaysia, Persatuan Council Malaysia. They've got free phone lines for people to talk to people. If you really need help, go and call them. All right? You don't have to face the situation alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anasu. Mr. Kenny, any expert opinion or comments on this issue on job loss?
Yeah, I agree with what Dr. Anasuya mentioned towards the end, because befrienders, we always believe that, you don't have to suffer on your own. Look for someone that you can trust to open up, to talk about it, because even if that person is not able to give you a job, to solve your problems, but, knowing that someone is there for you helps a lot, you can basically, it's not possible to basically ask for a job from that friend, right? But you can always ask for support. And I think that is very important. Knowing that you are not alone dealing with issues in your life, that is something that, that's why it's important for us to just reach out to someone when we are facing any issues in our lives.
Interesting that you have mentioned that. Because suicide is a crime in Malaysia. So what can we, like normal citizens, do to change that? Because it's not easy for normal, like citizens to seek for help. We do not know. We know help is there, but how do we seek for help? Because people do need help, but they do not want to be stigmatized or they do not want to be punished. Can you share some tips or comment on this?
Yeah, I think the problem is that the stigma, many people feel like I need to reach out for help, but then I'm afraid to do it because of how would people react if they know that I'm seeing a psychiatrist, if I'm seeing a counselor, for example. Even in the school setting, going to the counselor, what happens the next day when people talk about it, So I think that is the challenge when someone is going through some issues and they feel like they need to get help. It actually takes a lot of courage to be able to do it. So again, here I believe that you can always start within your circle. Talk to people that you're comfortable with, yeah? Or if not, you know, call up a helpline and talk about it, because, like, for example, if you call the befrienders, you can remain anonymous. We don't know who you are, and you can talk about anything, yeah? So I think you can always start with that. And then ask yourself if you need further help. Because sometimes if you're really struggling with mental health issues, just talking to a helpline does not solve the problem, does not help that much. Yeah, it actually complements. But what you really need is to go to a professional. Yeah, you can always go to like Dr. Anasuya mentioned. Yeah, a counselor, yeah, or if you feel like you need more than that, if it's something biological, maybe you would need to see a psychiatrist. So in cases like that, I think what's important is you need to maybe get someone who's able to go with you, to journey with you, and I think that is very important. It's difficult, it's really difficult because of stigma, yeah. So it's important for you to be able to maybe get someone to give you that strength as well to journey it.
Okay, I want to add that they are actually groups that are working on removing that law that makes suicide illegal. So one of the things that you can do as a Malaysian is then write in, support the NGOs that are actually trying to push the bill to change the law. That's actually one of the major things that can be done. And you know, I'd encourage anybody to find out which NGOs are supporting that, you know, and which members of parliament are pushing that idea of removing that as an illegal thing, and support their behavior. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anasuya and Kenny, Mr. Kenny. Um, there are quite a few questions. I'm a little bit overwhelmed with a lot of questions. We'll try our best to accommodate to everyone. So one question for Dr. Anasu is that what are other things to do to cope with grief if talking does not help with that person? It does not work for that person. Talking does not work.
Okay, one of the things that you know, that helps with grief for everybody, and as much as we think it's meaningless, it actually has a lot of meaning. Our culture. I have actually done research on grief, and what I've actually found in terms of all the cultures is the cultural activities that we do that draws family together, that gives you something to do, actually helps in the grief process. That 1 year anniversary of the death, the focus on that gives people a time that is appropriate for grieving and gives people space to grieve. So the first thing is, if talking doesn't help, and you're not the kind of person who wants to talk, it's have a ritual now under COVID that is different for you. One of the things that I would strongly suggest is create like a, you know, image journal of that person. Nowadays we all have our images on the phone. We don't have anything physical. Get it printed. Do it physical. This part is not as helpful as physically doing on paper and, you know, paper and book, a memory book for that individual who passed on. It doesn't matter where they are. I do believe somebody asked in the comments that, you know, a family member who passed on, the elderly, they are getting depressed over the loss of their partner. Yes, that happens, especially in that first year. Because for many elderly, that first year, they are supposed to be grieving. That's the culture for them. So sometimes what you need is you need to respect their space. If they are religious, pray with them for that person, especially just for a while, just acknowledge. Give them an hour a day of your time. Give them an hour where they can talk about that person. And then, you know, after that, okay, we got to talk about other things. You want to talk about it later? Come back to that 1 hour, even for yourself. Give yourself 1 hour a day to remember the person who passed on. When we do this type of small things, we ritualize certain things, we give space to grieve, then we can actually grieve. We need to grieve. Medicine does not stop the grieving process. If you're under grief, and then you decide that no, it's not grief, it's depression, somebody's just passed on, you take meds, you know what's going to happen? The minute you stop the meds, the grief is going to come back, because grief needs to be processed. Taking meds does not stop the fact that somebody that you loved has passed on. So please don't see grief as a totally negative thing. It comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of loss of love. So if you can give reverence to that loss, then maybe we can find a way to come forward and come out of it. And everybody will have something slightly different or slightly different way of grieving. And it can be very beautiful. Okay. So, find your way. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. Dr. Jaslyn, a question from the audience. How do you stay so cheerful with 3 kids? I have 2 kids and a full-time job. I don't have any help at home and I'm overwhelmed with work and kids' schoolwork. I'm so stressed because I can't coach them to finish all their homework. I feel so guilty. Any tips for this audience?
Well, I go through shit as well, to be very honest. Yeah. So, but I make sure I express, my sadness or whatsoever to my husband. So he's a very good listening shoulder, and I do the same for him as well. So I think a happy family or a happy environment begins with a very healthy relationship, husband and wife. The most important thing. So sometimes, if, for example, husband and wife fight at home, you're not going to go to work the next day feeling all bubbly and happy, right? So I think, yeah, so everything starts at home. So that's why I would tell my husband, ground rule number one before we got married. No matter what happens and no matter how bad our fight is, no matter what happens around us, the two of us need to go to bed happy. The two of us till today still say, I love you. And the two of us still hit each other head when we do something stupid. And we just acknowledge, if we did something stupid, yes, we did it. We acknowledge it and we ask for forgiveness and we move on. So I think start beginning, this small little thing, I've been practicing this for the past 12 years. It really helps, being happy internally, not having grudges, not feeling bitter about something that had happened. So from there, I think it definitely helped, treating the way how you treat your kids. It helps. Sometimes when you're so pissed off at work with your husband and whatsoever, and you throw all your tantrums and all your pressure on your kids, which I find it absolutely unfair. If that actually happens, is sometimes, when I just snap at my child, I treat them like an adult. I bring, for example, I'll bring Zandra. Zandra, I think mommy was a bit loud to you. Mommy want to say that I'm sorry. So that's how we start at home, and that's how we ask for forgiveness. So I think as long as you're pure, you're honest, and you love what you do, you love what you do at work, I think it begins at home. It definitely begins at home.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jasmine. I'm aware that you need to go.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you. Kenny and Dr. Anusriya was so knowledgeable. Yeah, it was a very good session. Yeah. Thank you. See you guys soon.
Thank
Bye,
you so much,
Shai.
Jasmine.
Okay. A question for Dr. Anasu and Mr. Kenny. Audience are asking, what is the difference between a person who needs therapy and someone who just needs emotional support?
That one is a very good question, and the answer is very straightforward. Is your grief interfering with your life? If you are grieving and there's no interference in your life, then that's fine. My mom died over 24 years ago. I grieve when I feel her loss. I feel it so bad I can sit down and cry. Does it interfere with my day-to-day interactions? No, it doesn't. But when I feel that, the traumatic upsurge of grief and I feel bad, I will cry it out. I will write soppy poetry, post on Facebook. I will do what I need to do. I will give her that reverence at that point in time. So, that I'm not haunted by her death. I'm not depressed by her death, but I still feel the pain of it. So if you are in that category, you've got no issues. However, if in everything that you're doing, it's interfering with your day-to-day functioning, that's when you need help. And in fact, that's not just for grief. That's for any, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, the minute it starts interfering with your day-to-day, what you want to accomplish, what you need to do, that's when you need to start, okay, do I need some support in this? Do I need help in this? And then go for it. Okay?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Anasu. Mr. Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I fully agree with what Dr. Anasuya has mentioned. Yeah, it's a question that you need to ask yourself and be honest about it. Yeah.
Okay. Just to ask from the audience, on behalf of the audience, for the befrienders, right, is there a call time limit for people who are calling in?
There is no time limit. You can speak as long as you want to. We have callers who call and really depressed, highly suicidal callers who can talk up to an hour and a half. It really depends on your need. So there is no cap. There's no time limit.
Okay. Since both of you are expert in this field, a question from the audience is, how do you get help when you are depressed, but without the situation being judged by the counselors or your family members who are close-minded? Again, it's a stigmatized.
Can I say the counselors who are close-minded? Find a different counselor immediately. Okay, like anything else, if you're shopping around, counselors should not be judgmental and counselors should not be close-minded. I train counselors and I do counselor training. And honestly, if you find a counselor that is judgmental and close-minded, that person is not good. So just, stop going to see them, see somebody else who is better and who's more well-trained than that person. That's the first one, okay? The second one is you have to know your family. And you have to know who in your family or your friend circle you can talk to. Not everybody, you cannot talk to everybody. And some people are very good at listening, but then they're not very good at keeping their mouth shut. That's one thing you have to watch out for. So sometimes the judgment doesn't come from the person you shared it with, but the person that they shared it with. So you have to be a little bit careful about who you share your thoughts with or your pain with, because unfortunately, one is they have to be a good listener, and another one is they have to be a good secret keeper. Okay? And if they're a counselor and they're judgmental, they're not a good counselor. Shop around, find better ways.
Kenny.
I agree, because we've heard horrible stories of experiences of talking to counselors or even psychiatrists. Yeah. So again, but having said that, yeah, there are many psychiatrists, many counselors who are very good out there. So yes, doctor. So don't give up. Don't give up. If you really need to shop around, do it. Yeah. It's for your own. Even if you go to a very good counselor, but you find that it's not helpful, because you need the chemistry as well. Yeah. So don't be afraid to choose something that is the best for you. Yeah, it's okay to shop around. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Well, looks like that's all the time that we have for today. I want to thank all our speakers for their time and useful insights, and also thank everyone who has joined us tonight. Before we leave, I would like to remind everyone that mental health is just as important as your physical health. So if you're struggling emotionally and mentally, know that you're not alone, and please do not hesitate to ask for help. That's all from me tonight. Stay strong, stay safe, and have a good night. And apologies because we're not able to address all the questions. But I think Mr. Kenny is putting on a befrienders contact, right? Something, yes. Okay, thank you very much. I'll pass it on to our host, Arvind.
Thank you, Ms. Pang Chai, for moderating the session. It was indeed a fruitful session, and I believe the audience has learned a lot from each speaker and has some valuable takeaways, especially those who have gone through a similar experience or are still going through such an ordeal. Before we end the session, we would like to do a quick evaluation poll to find out more about how you found the overall session experience. Your opinion matters to us. On behalf of Star Media Group, I would like to thank Taylor's Education for coming on board with this, and also our speakers, Dr. Anasuya, Mr. Kenny Lim, and Dr. Jasmine Lim, and of course our moderator, Ms. Pang Chai. For those who have missed out on tonight's session from the beginning, you may still be able to retrieve this live stream on FB Starbase at your leisure. Good night and take care, everyone.